Welcome to One Bite at a Time,
a podcast where I, Chef Wu,
and I, Chef V,
discuss our hospitality industry through our personal and professional experiences.
and touch on all the things that make us cry, smile, laugh, shout, and celebrate, all whilst trying to figure out how to set the standard. One bite at a time.
Right, so today we are going to be discussing Nigeria's diverse hospitality sector. We're going to be investigating whether it is a equal playing field for all stakeholders.
Definitely. And our industry has attracted a lot of foreign interest. And from the first look, it kind of seems like they come in at such a bigger scale.
Absolutely.
So we need to ask the question, what do the foreigners have that Nigerians may not?
So today we have in the showroom with us someone that I believe is quite a huge or has quite a pivotal role in our industry. We have Tannaz Banham.
Yes.
Have I said that right? Perfect. So we have Tannaz with us. She's the founder of Lost in Lagos, Awari App, right? And she is also the co-founder of a new association, the RCBC. I get that right. So that's restaurants,
cafe.
No. I got this. Bar, club.
Yes.
Restaurant, cafe, bar, club association, which she's going to tell us a little bit about and just a little bit more about herself.
Yeah, and we believe you have such great insight on this conversation, and we cannot wait to hear what you have to say about the professional landscape for both players in the field. I do think we have to ask you the question, is there something else at play that we may not necessarily know about? And we're looking forward to it.
Likewise.
Okay.
So tell us a bit about yourself, Tannaz.
Okay, so my name is Tannaz Banham. I have lived in Nigeria for 16 years now.
Wow.
I started Lost in Lagos 13 years ago. And the idea behind Lost in Lagos was to showcase everything that Lagos has to offer to both locals and visitors alike. And what I found was that even then, 13 years ago, a lot of businesses were quite hidden. And I feel like the landscape's completely changed now. And there's much more of a desire to be seen and to be, exposed. But back when I started, they were all behind walls. So it has changed a lot, but there is still a need for more exposure, more appreciation of how important marketing their businesses are, because businesses tend to focus on operations, which is fair, but a business cannot exist without the exposure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I started Lost in Lagos. We launched the Lost in Lagos magazine. We're in our 8th year now of the magazine.
Amazing.
And also the Kitchen Nigeria.
Yeah, we have to talk about how we know each other. So I was with I was in the first season of the Kitchen Nigeria, and I think that was a fantastic platform to showcase the growth of where the industry is going and how there are local chef talent coming out of the Nigerian landscape. So that was an amazing opportunity there, and I think also a good way of showcasing the hospitality industry where it's at now, and how Lost in Lagos has also contributed to awareness, marketing, putting a light onto our industry. So,
and it's funny, well, maybe it's more ironic that we're having this conversation now, because the whole idea behind the Kitchen Nigeria was to create that platform for aspiring restaurateurs.
Okay.
So we want more Nigerians to come out there and to showcase talent and to showcase the ability of the talent pool out there. I mean, and there was one particular chef that really made me think, why aren't there more people like him, Michael Elegbede, because he really took the Nigerian cuisine to another level and pushed it out. Although in a private setting, there are a lot of people like him out there. They just don't have the platform, and that's what the Kitchen Nigeria was and is. So, and then RCBC was started during COVID. During COVID, we saw a huge problem for the industry, the hospitality and restaurant industry, because obviously nobody could go out and it affected them a lot. So we put it together to kind of create more structure around regulations and what can businesses do during that period. And it kind of just grew at the time to a realization that there hasn't been any formal structure put in place to assist and guide these businesses. They're all kind of working independently of each other, and they don't even communicate with each other.
That's so valid.
Exactly. So that's how RCBC started.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's just something you said, like two things I want to highlight. One, you were talking about the Kitchen Nigeria and its goals of saying, you know, there are so many skilled chefs in the industry, and how come they haven't been able to take that next step into possibly putting themselves into an entrepreneurial position of owning a restaurant. And then also talking about how there are so many businesses here who have opened and they're not communicating with each other. So there hasn't been that sense of camaraderie of coming together and saying, where's our industry at and what can we do better? So what is that play that's causing, let's say, maybe the people who should be opening restaurants not having the opportunity or maybe the information to do so in a successful way? And who has done it successfully and why? So that's what this topic is going to be all about.
Meant to cover, exactly.
So I'll tell you, there are two factors at play here. One, that the industry is still very young. Those who came into the industry, those foreigners who came into the industry, their sole focus was to open a restaurant, and to their 100% of their energy was put into that. Now, before that, Nigerians who opened restaurants did it as a side gig. So they had their other business, and so you could tell the difference. You can see when somebody has invested, like, you know,
time,
their
effort,
life
money,
savings on a restaurant, and someone who's done it as, you know, oh, well, it looks easy, let me try it, and convert it a house. And they convert like a house, put some furniture, hire a cook, not even a chef. And so there is a difference. And when the industry really started building up, a standard was set. And we got very comfortable with that low standard and used a very ridiculous excuse as, well, this is Nigeria, what do you expect? And we were okay with that rhetoric, and which I think is an awful rhetoric to have. It's a complete disservice.
An excuse now.
But I feel like we are kind of pushing beyond that.
Yes, we are.
We can see the quality of restaurants that are out there right now are way, way higher. And in fact, I would say competitive with international standards, like completely. I mean, I'm involved in the top 50, world's top 50, which ranks restaurants. And they've recently, the past couple of years, gotten some judges from Africa to be much more involved, to give more African businesses a chance to compete with some of these huge names across the world. And what we're trying to do now is to get businesses in Nigeria in particular to be on that playing field. On that, and I think there are enough businesses here that can compete at this time, which is incredible, because I mean, we're talking about just 10 years ago, and now we are competing at a level where some of these restaurants are getting recognition
on a global scale.
And that's going to help us. I think Wumi and I, we had this conversation about the lack of these kind of publications such as Michelin Guide or World's 50 coming to show, you know, to highlight the restaurants that are doing amazing on the continent. I think World's 50 Best, I can only mention just a few on the African continent, like in South Africa. I know there's maybe one or two that have been in that position. But I think it's a good thing to hear that the interest is coming, and maybe that would also help the restaurateurs here to know that we're not in a bubble anymore. You can't just get away with things. Like if you want to be on that level as being seen as just as good as any other restaurant around the world, you have to put in the work.
Right. And I think the other thing that you mentioned is the fact that they're actually bringing on people of
within
African within the continent,
right,
onto those platforms, because I always say that in order for these platforms to come in and like judge, so to speak, our establishments and our food, they have to understand our flavors and our techniques, because you can't use the same measure as French cuisine or any other cuisine because it's not exactly the same.
Yes.
So having people that understand
the criteria, the culture.
Yes, the culture, the food, the flavors is it's a great step. It's a great starting step. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it's important because you can't expect a white British man or a white American to come in and be like, eat a stew. Like, how you don't know what that flavor is, what it's meant to taste like. So your judgment will be entirely off.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have the palate for it.
Yeah.
So that is something that I've always said is really, really important.
Right.
So it's very interesting to hear that that's something that's being done.
And I think also it is up to that restaurateur to take responsibility to ensure that they are at a competitive level. So it's 100%. Not enough to say, well, we are here. You have to look at yourself and see, are you at that level where you could be considered for a top 50?
Mm-hmm.
Are you at that level which you could be considered for a Michelin star? And not just because, well, you know, we're serving really good food. That's not enough. There is so much more that goes into it. I mean, we actually did a masterclass as part of the kitchen. And I actually learned a lot because, you know, we were talking to experts within the field of the, you know, restaurant field. And in my opinion, in my humble opinion, there are 3 pillars that go into building a restaurant. One is food, obviously, one and the most important.
Yeah.
Ambiance and service. And service is a huge factor.
Yeah.
A huge factor.
You don't have to tell me.
Yeah. I think it's the second biggest factor.
Yes, I
outside
agree.
the food and the kitchen.
I think
it's the second.
Service is next.
Yes.
And the irony is that in Nigeria, it's done the other way around. Everyone's initial focus is ambiance. And
exactly.
the one they neglect the most, they equally.
I think equally.
They neglect the kitchen a bit more.
Yeah.
Because they're a bit more conscious about how their forward-facing staff are, but they don't take into consideration the kitchen, the equipment, just the size of the kitchens in most places is not taken into account. And then the skill set of their staff. So it's like you hire people that can't execute the vision you have in mind, and then you're upset it's not being executed.
Yeah. I think it's a continuous flow. That's why I put food and service together, because I see a lot of the times where what you're saying with competing globally, there has to be a sense of synergy with all these departments within an establishment. And you can see sometimes that there is a break in, let's say, between the kitchen and the front of house, the back of house, the front of house. It's treated completely different. When there should be a middle ground, a fusion of the two, where the customer is experiencing a holistic experience with every single touch point of the restaurant.
And that, I think that's the area I learned the most in. During when we were filming the masterclass, I was just astounded at how much goes into actually putting together that service experience, that experience for the customer, without you even noticing. As a customer, I never think about each and every one of those touch points that go through the restaurateur's like processing. And that, I think, is what is lacking still in Nigeria. And I don't blame the industry here. It's like I said, it's still very young. There are no service, there's no hospitality schools. So you can't say, okay, you know, well, they can go for training. Or that each
there
and every a few, yes, but
not
with
enough
the size
for the
of the industry
that we're trying to churn out.
Exactly.
Yes, no.
And also you have to, you know, ask, okay, the what is being sent out, and this is all things I'm learning from the association, actually, because I don't own a restaurant, but I'm learning a lot from the interactions between these businesses. And a big complaint is that there's a big turnover of staff who are being recycled from one place to another. I don't know how many restaurants I've been to where I've seen a waiter that's worked in like
from 3
or 4 different places that I keep running into. So there's a big recycle of staff, and it's because some of these restaurants have very high standards, and they don't want to hire people who have minimal training. They have to have like full training, or they want to train them themselves, and they will not accept someone who's been trained through a school because they feel like they didn't teach them the way they want them to be taught. So even the standards of the schools that are being training them are going to be different from the expectations of some of these restaurants. So, I mean, you don't have like a cordon bleu here where, you know, the chefs are being trained this way and that way. And not to say that there's a necessity for that, but there isn't anything comparable to that here too. Everyone is being trained on job, like on site.
Yes,
so
it's true.
Which also means that they're learning the ways of one restaurant, and then they go to another restaurant and
they have to be retrained again.
So there's a lot of effort being put in by these restaurateurs who are retraining and constantly, you know, going back and forth between staff. So it is very, very difficult.
I get all that, but I think at the same time, what I am hearing from what you're saying is at least there is a growth in the industry and
huge growth.
There's huge growth. And for us to be getting recognition, to be investigated upon, to see what establishments can be looked at to be globally recognized on an equal playing field, I take that as a step forward.
Absolutely.
But the question I want to ask, let's spice up a bit and let's get real. Who is really running the hospitality industry here? Who are those businesses that are going to be initially sought after? And
who are the people behind
who are the
them?
people?
Yeah.
Are Nigerians there?
Yeah.
Nigerians are there, but they're not the majority. I would say right now, and this is based on the top restaurants currently, maybe top 10, 40% are Nigerian, 60% are foreigners. And that is because that, you know, these foreigners, like I said, are coming in and investing solely in this business. The 40% are also Nigerians who are solely invested. But the rest of them, outside of that, you know, small pool of like, you know, top restaurants, are Nigerians and foreigners mixed, but they're all like average. And this is still, I think foreigners tend to focus all their energy in the business, whereas the Nigerians will be like, okay, I have a restaurant, but I also have, you know, 3 other businesses. And then they hire people to run the restaurants. And sometimes the people they're hiring are foreigners. So you might think that it's owned by a foreigner, but it's actually just run by foreigners. But yes, the Lebanese have a huge footprint on the industry. That is where they are very strong. That is, if you go to Lebanon, the best restaurants, clubs, everything.
I do say that all the time.
It is.
I think so one of my things, I've had conversations with other people, and someone once said to me, a Lebanese woman, she once said to me, hospitality is our export. So Lebanon doesn't have things of the soil. They don't have natural resources. Them as a people are their resources. So hospitality is their biggest export. And I hear it because there are some, from what I've seen, really, really great, like high-end restaurants in Lebanon. But I think going back to something you said, even when you talk about the fact that a lot are Nigerian owned, but
not run.
Foreign managed, I think that's another thing that's worth interrogating, just because it's like, where has this, there seems to be a disconnect, there seems to be this misconception. And I don't know if it's a misconception, but think of it like this. I see it as a Nigerian in Nigeria, there is an irony in the fact that one of our biggest food is arguably top 3 exports out of Nigeria. The irony of our industry being majority run and spearheaded by foreigners is not lost on us. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. I think what's important to note as well is when you do look at and study Nigerians as a people, when you come to our homes, we are naturally hospitable people. So it is a skill that if it was looked at properly and seen as a resource that we should invest in, it would be completely successful. 100%. As why not? Why can't you have Nigerians also running successful establishments with the way that it is natural to us? We cater. When you come to our homes, there's always, you must eat, you must drink, we must make sure you're comfortable.
Yeah. We're extremely hospitable family just
is it the business, the operation?
You know what? There was something, I don't know, maybe it was you that said it to me. Someone was like, restaurant culture is not our culture.
Yes.
And I think that's where the disconnect is.
Exactly.
Right. Restaurant culture is not our culture.
So
is
culturally,
come
in your
to
home.
The home.
Yes.
And
but as a business.
Yes, but as a business where we haven't figured out how to marry the business and the culture. Because if we figure out how to marry the business and the culture,
and the funny thing is, that is where the problem lies, because they think that it's that easy. You can just take that home culture and put it in a restaurant, but
you have to understand where can you not cut costs? Where is it that you have to put your money towards? And that business culture, that business mindset of you can't always cut corners. Maybe that's where something we do have to look within ourselves, because
you've got to figure out.
The thing is, it's not like the industry, there isn't space for Nigerians to lead the industry. There is plenty. Nobody is stopping anybody. It's just that nobody's taking that initiative to like kind of be like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to lead this industry.
What I do think, and I think it's important to mention. So I'll just paint a landscape. I mean, we talked about how, for example, the Lebanese have this export that I think it's fully backed by the country. You know, you go anywhere in the world, that's what you can see. The skill of Lebanese people is hospitality. I mean, you can go to the Middle East, Dubai, Qatar. They completely export their skill, because you see that everywhere. I'm seeing Lebanese-owned restaurants there. So it's not really a problem. I don't think the number of foreign business here might necessarily be the problem, because it happens all over the world.
Exactly.
But what I do see here is that I don't think we've put the structures and investments in place for Nigerians to be able to access funds, access loans, access the opportunity to be in a place where they can, open a place. You see, for example, if a foreign person comes in, they come in with that objective. They come in with foreign investment. They come in with currency. They come in with investment to do that in this country.
Right.
But Nigerians may not necessarily have that access. You can't just walk into a bank and, hope that we have those loans in place. The government subsidies.
The resources are not there, but I feel like, and I want to catch some heat for this, don't be mad at me. I think another thing at play is how we are as a people when it comes to, we see a foreigner running something or doing something, and we inherently make the assumption that it's better.
That's a valid, and I think that's a separate conversation.
So there is definitely
painting I'm trying to
the but there's white adulation at play. Even in that, when you speak of funding, though, it's like if I went into, I don't know, any establishment, any bank or something with Tannaz, and I said, I see what you're saying.
I see what you're saying. So people who want to offer investment to our people, it's also
that white adulation plays into that. It's like let me not put a percentage on it, but there is a higher chance that I will be taken, that you'll be taken more seriously. Okay, she can probably do it. She's working with this Oyinbo. Do you get what I mean? And it's unfortunate, but that's really what it is.
It's the reality.
It's a mindset thing, and it's something we have to be honest with ourselves about. It's constantly in play, and it then feeds into the restaurant culture where we assume a restaurant owned or run by.
It happens in every industry.
And that is why Nigerians also choose foreigners to run their establishments, because they feel
make them
like
look serious.
Exactly.
It happens in all the industries. I've seen it in mining and finance. If you have an international partner from China, suddenly the funds coming to your business are...
Why is that?
It's a mindset thing. It's white adulation, and I think it definitely
how do you change that?
It's techie, because this comes from colonization. It has a further history than just today. It's not a today thing. It's not a last decade thing. It's not even a last century thing.
I think it has to come from actually just owning up to it, and putting in deliberate measures to say, it sometimes sucks to say, we're going to put in 80% of our funding to this because this is a market that needs it. But it takes an ownership to say, and for someone to say, these are the rules and we're going to make sure we follow it, and we're going to make sure we do a ratio. At first, that's how it sounds. It sounds a bit divisive.
I think it's also. I think even though it is important to keep some of that influence here, I feel like those people who have taken or exported their concepts are actually also helping because they are creating more awareness and taking the culture beyond and introducing it to the world.
To a wider
audience.
So
it is that is part of the struggle, is creating that awareness beyond just Nigerians. Nigerians know what we have. I mean, Nigerians know the food, the culture, everything. That's not what matters. The matters is letting the rest of the world know
and tell our
about
story internationally.
Exactly. So there needs to be a balance of both.
It's a flow. And exactly what you said, balance.
Right.
And what we fear, I think what we've said is what we fear is that what are people seeing? What are people who are growing up and being, wanting to be inspired by the industry? We hope that they're not just seeing, you have to, the only way to be successful or get recognition is to go out. But hopefully there are people here like ourselves who would stay here and ensure that our voices are heard, and we create a new narrative for support and infrastructure implementation as well.
English. Wow. No, those are really valid points. And I feel like from this conversation, I feel like another thing we can do is just kind of look. The three of us, I'm sure we've made ample observations in our time in the industry. What do we think it is that people that are running the industry are doing right, and what can we as Nigerian-owned, or what can Nigerian-owned restaurateurs, God, the English is flogging me, I apologize. What can Nigerian restaurateurs or people that are even considering it, what can they learn from that? What can they take from it? Actionable steps that it's like, okay, something that, Tannaz, you let us know, something you've observed that you feel like we can copy and paste, so to speak.
I think the copy and paste might be a mistake, because we don't want to have the same restaurant just copied and pasted. It's
no, but more like the techniques, the processes that they're using.
Those are also unique to the chef. And I think that's a big part of the success is the kitchen. So the chef is, and not a cook. The chef, the head chef, is not just someone who cooks.
Yeah,
they manage. They run, they lead. So having someone who is experienced, who has the passion, and the mistake a lot of restaurants make, both foreign and locally owned, is that they don't hire someone of that level to run their kitchen. And these are important, very, very important people in running an institution. And because they're not front-facing, we take them for granted. So they think, it's not important. As long as we have a few people who cook. So, yes, chefs are the most important element in a successful
I love that you said that point, and we didn't have to as chefs. I love that you said that point.
I'll get payment later.
I think to even add on that is ensuring that you include the chefs in from the beginning in building your establishment, because it's not a afterthought process.
Right.
It is, chefs can bring so much insight. Skilled chefs of that prestige and level of experience can bring in so much thoughts that would actually save you costs later down the line.
100%.
You haven't been able to think about. The back of house is just as important as the front of house, and having leaders from the beginning think about all those aspects, like you said, would really help.
If you look at the US markets, the UK markets, very high end with all these stars and blah blah blah. Their focus is who is the chef.
Yeah,
Nobody knows who owns the restaurant.
Yes,
it's the chef. And when these articles are written in New York Times, their focus is the chef.
It's the heart.
So what is missing here?
Sorry, I don't mean to. It's the heart.
No, but I always say that though. Yeah, the kitchen is the heart of your establishment. You don't have a restaurant if you don't have a fully functioning, efficient, and just well-rounded kitchen. You don't have a restaurant.
And I can count on my hand how many restaurants have highlighted the chef here. In fact, I would only say 2 or 3, and that's because the chef is the owner.
Yeah.
So even then, it's not a focus, because it's not in the, like when we look at restaurants, we look at a restaurant as a whole and not as the like prestigious industry that is, you know, collecting stars and rankings and things like that. We don't even look at it like that. I know there are one or two restaurants who are kind of taking it so seriously that they are, you know, putting themselves out there, and maybe they sometimes bring in like, you know, celebrity chefs and things like that. But I don't think that's enough.
It's not enough.
It's not.
Because they go.
Yes. Yeah. And I know one establishment tried to, you know, work with a local chef that was quite big, and they just weren't vibing. And it needs to be that synergy. And one of the problems is that, you know, the chef doesn't own the restaurant, but the restaurant owner wants the chef to do it their way and doesn't give them the
creative
flexibility
that is required.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think me and Vanessa have both seen that firsthand. It's part of the problem. It's a big part of your problem, because if you have one vision and you hire somebody that has the skill set and the experience to execute what you're asking for, but then you change your mind along the way, or you make their job difficult, that's synergy, like you mentioned, is something that needs to develop, because they're two different people coming together. So unless we know, or you know the person from the jump and you guys have come together with an idea, there's going to have to be compromise somewhere. And restaurant owners need to understand that without the chef, you can't do anything. So if you're not ready to, you know, take a little black seat, I'm not saying the person needs to run and own, you need to hand over the deed of your establishment, but understand that in order to
there
execute,
is equity.
Yeah, there's
skill.
Yeah, there is. But in order for you to, your end goal, if your end goal is not just self-serving, but it's also for the betterment of like the industry, you have to compromise. And that's not a bad thing. If anything, that's going to propel you so much more further than you trying to go at it alone.
Yeah.
There just needs to be also more talent, a bigger talent pool.
Yes.
So, and there might be, but they're not
I agree.
Out there.
And
they don't put themselves out there.
If we took this point more seriously, I think that it needs to be from the jump in the type of schools that we are building and the type of courses and how structured and intentional the courses are in producing such types of chefs. And there actually is no problem looking outside of Nigeria for a chef talent as well.
Right.
I don't think, there's the whole continent of Africa that you can look to, and the diaspora.
Yeah.
There's amazing chefs, that may want to come back and link their diaspora knowledge back home. So if we understood the importance of investing in chef talent, I think it would also help with the nurturing of local chefs to also want to build themselves to that level.
And there is a difference between a chef that runs a restaurant and a chef that does test kitchens there's a big difference, because running a test kitchen, you can be fully hands-on because you have a limited number of guests, or not just a test kitchen, I use that as but even like a pop-up or smaller space. Yeah. But running a restaurant, it's not just about the food, it's about the business, of running the restaurant. Like the head chef is almost like they don't do as much cooking as they do managing and leading. So it's about, being able to purchase products. It's about ensuring that food goes out on time. It's about maintaining standards. So there's a lot that goes behind it.
Exactly.
Is much more difficult.
It's a lot more managerial.
Sorry, can I just interject there? I'm really big on terminology. On a technicality, the person that does everything that Tannaz just broke down for us is the executive chef.
Sorry, that's
fine.
Executive chef.
And I just feel like it's important, because what happens is a lot of people say, I'm looking for a head chef, and then they expect the head chef to do exec chef work, but don't pay them exec chef money.
Yes.
And that is where you also run into problems. Because if you're asking someone, if you're employing someone at head chef and they know what a head chef does, but then you're expecting them to do all those other admin things that come with being an executive chef, and the remuneration doesn't match,
you're going to
have a problem.
Yes,
you're not going to get what you expect.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I just thought it was important to say that, because she said head chef a few times.
And sometimes you can have executive chefs who also take on the head chef role.
And that's
fine. You have to be of the executive chef level. You can't. Not all head chefs can be executive chefs.
Exactly.
So that's the difference. But that's a fantastic point. I think the only other one I could think of as well, which could just be a short one, is also just ensuring that before you open, you do understand the amount of you need an army behind you. You need support. And, when you do have, for example, you see family-owned restaurants that just have someone that's always there. You have the cousin, you have the sister-in-law, you have the auntie, that you can't just open a restaurant and think you can disappear. It doesn't work. And I think that was what we were seeing a lot of the time years ago, which I do think is getting a bit better. But you saw, for example, the kind of, when we talked about people that would open a restaurant as like a tertiary business, they didn't understand that it actually took so much physical presence to be there, and it really takes an army. So really bringing in the right people from the beginning and ensuring you've covered all those areas that are involved, whether it's operations, whether it's the financial, the procurement, the culinary part of things, the marketing, the physical hands of who's going to sit there morning to night every day.
And if you do look at some of the best businesses, establishments, I think they are family owned, whether it's family by blood, family by marriage, family by,
and they're always there.
They're always there.
At least for the first couple of years, they have no life.
Yeah. That is a general thing across the world. That is not synonymous to only Nigeria.
And that's with any business.
Exactly.
Not just a restaurant, but any business. If you want to nurture it and grow it and be successful, you have to put all your time into it. And not just like 20% or 30%. Yeah. It's hard to multitask. And I've always found it very, very interesting that in Nigeria, so many people have multiple businesses. Because I find it extremely difficult to grow. I have 2 businesses, but to grow even those 2 businesses, I know my second business suffers a lot because I don't give it as much attention. So it is like, you can multitask, but it's impossible to be in more than one place at a time. So you will always have a ceiling of how much you can grow.
And you need to, I know people think it's enough to just employ people in these positions, but if you don't have people that you respect enough to make decisions, it's not going to work.
Time.
If you're micromanaging.
Exactly.
But you could be Superwoman and do it all. I can.
Shout out to the women.
I think just to kind of like close off on this, I think in everything that we've said, a great way to end this would be to highlight some of the Nigerian-owned businesses that I think are doing spectacularly, that are executing in a way that is inspirational. They are great, businesses to learn from. Even just looking into the people that own them and how committed they are to it. It's a great, like Vanessa says a lot, point of contact, something that you can, touch points. I love that. I love that. I'm going to business all the times you say, is it business school that? Sorry, I'm an engineer. I don't know any about it. But yes, I just feel like there's so much we can learn from them. So outside of this, you can go and just look at those establishments and what they're doing and how they're doing it. I'm really big on us learning from other people. I'm a big watch what other people do, take what you can from it, and adapt it to your own needs. So I'm going to start with 2 of my favorites. One is The House and the Terrace. That's run by Toby Hamilton. She's also partners with her husband. And I think they have extended family around the business, or chosen family. Either way, there's a familial structure behind their runnings. And there is something with The House and the Terrace. One thing I notice is they have quite a large staff, roster, but you can tell the staff are wholly committed to the business. And that's not something you see often. If I'm correct, I don't think they have as high a turnaround on their staff, because they nurture their staff, and their staff that then kind of develops, they develop a loyalty to the business, which is, I think, is something that people can learn from when it comes to running an establishment. The second one I would say is the Smiths, who run the Smiths Maple and Cafeteria. I'm gonna talk about that one separately. I want to do a write-up on them, but if you look at the business model they've followed and how they've executed, it is so well thought out, so intentional. And that's something we touched on. You have to be intentional when you're starting. You can tell they've put everything into this and it shows. So you can't just do it as part, I want to open a restaurant one day and boom, no, you have to be thought out with it. And I think the beauty of them having 3 establishments is if you look at Cafeteria, they clearly started lower end, lower targets, you know what I mean? And they've taken whatever they've learned from that and they've upgraded it to the Maple. Then they've taken that again, done the same thing, figured out what we done right, what we done wrong, what we do differently, and then they've given us the Smiths. Honestly, if they could give us a 4th, I would be wholly impressed because I'd like to see where they'd go to next.
Fun fact.
I like
Tayo, so it's Kenda and Tayo Smith. Tayo was 8 months pregnant. I went into the kitchen, their kitchen. She was 8 months pregnant.
And she's the chef,
Cooking. And this girl, I was like, what? You are about to deliver this child. And that's her 4th child. Yeah, so crazy. It's crazy. And she delivered, came back
straight
at
into the kitchen. And that is commitment.
And that is commitment. And that's exactly when you see
it's women.
That's women, one. And that's when you can see and appreciate a business that is putting in the effort.
Agreed.
Can I go with my absolutely. 2? One is Chef Obehi from Ona Lagos. I remember when she was doing her bao buns and doing, home deliveries, things like this.
What was it called? NY?
I wasn't familiar with it then.
Yeah. And then she went into kind of running the observatory, and from there started Ona Lagos. And Ona is like such a beautiful statement of what you can do with local ingredients and how much you can do with it. And she experiments with it, and she really has tried very hard. It's a beautiful space, it's a beautiful concept, and I really appreciate what she's done with it. And she's now opened the On a Cloud, which is the bar upstairs. Another one is Uzo from El Padrino. I just love how she started and
her whole journey.
Her whole journey, but also that empowering her staff. Like a lot of her staff have been there from her little pop-up that she had every Tuesday, Taco Tuesdays, and now she has her own space. And she's taken what she learned from hospitality in the US and implemented it, but with a Nigerian twist. Like she's, brought the concept of tacos and everything, but made it her own and localized it.
Adapted it to the palates.
Brought in the lessons she learned from the importance of customer service in hospitality, of running like a fast food chain in the US, and implemented it here. And it's kind of bringing that whole importance of the customer into her business while growing and nurturing her business and her staff, like empowering them and giving them that, like, the value of their jobs. Because so often we take for granted, servers and the wait staff and everything. And what she's done is empowered them to, like, say, you are a representative of this business, of this brand, and everywhere you go, you will represent us. And I think that is such an important lesson that so often we don't see in businesses here. The staff are not empowered. I remember I went into a cafe and there was a guy who had ordered something, and the waitress had put it, but she hadn't smiled or something. This guy went off at this waitress in the middle of the restaurant. He just stood up and started shouting at her in her face. And I was thinking, what right does this guy have to talk to this woman? She doesn't work for you. Like, okay, maybe she's having a bad day. It's okay. We're human. Like, why is it okay to treat people like that? And I think that is also something that needs to change. Because wait staff are the last touch point that a customer has with your
touch
business.
Points by Sheffy.
That's a whole thing on its own.
Trademark that. But it's true. These are things that a lot of people take for granted. And when you have a staff, like you said, with the house that does their job really well, that's the last thing you will remember is that experience. No matter if the food was good or bad, when that staff treats you like so special, you feel good.
Yeah.
And even if you have a bad meal, you're okay. You're willing to overlook
it
because of the way they took care of it. So it is so important.
Amazing. Can I mention 3?
Go for it.
Okay. So I'll start off first with Saka Lagos.
Okay.
The owner's name has slipped my mind because he calls himself the head waiter.
Okay.
He's always there.
Oh, I've never been to Saka.
You should go. That place has stood. I got you go. That place has been there for so many years, and the customer retention, staff retention is super, super high. They have kept their people. And one thing I love about them is the consistency. You can go there for just a very good bistro level meal. And he's doing fantastic. He's just opened another space called Bodega.
Oh, is that them? Okay.
Bodega Emporium.
Yeah.
And one thing I love about him is that he's so intentional with learning about the value chain of having a restaurant. So he's very into the agriculture, grows his own vegetables. He even got into butchery. So he has his own
butchers in there.
Butchery.
Butchers, yeah, butchery. Yeah.
He has his own butchery, so he's gone into the process of ensuring that the meat quality that they have in their restaurants as well is to the standard that he would want. So he does a lot of things, and he's so quiet about it because as an owner, he's so behind the scenes. You wouldn't know,
customer.
But he ensures that all those points come in. So shout out to them. My next one would definitely be just a shout out to Chef Nkesi with HSC Triple.
That's a solid one. Yeah.
I mean, how many years has it been?
Yeah.
They are just still there offering amazing, just good food.
Great food,
at such a good, affordable, attainable, and very well done level. I love the growth of Sabor as well, to see where they are now in their new space. And one thing I love about Nkesi is showcasing how to get equity and build partnerships and the business part of it. And she talks a lot about it. If you reach out to her, if you go on her page, she's very much on empowering people to know how to access finance and get into the industry through equity partners and things like that. So that's very good. And I want to take it out of Lagos and just recognize the Burgundy in Abuja.
That's a good one.
Another one that is coming up with a finer dining concept. And Chef Stone, shout out to you, but I have to go with my girl, Denike.
She's doing work.
You are doing your thing. And just to see her in Marseille, France as well for that huge conference and showing how a head chef can be the heart and soul of a restaurant. That's where we need to go. So I'm loving that aspect. There's a lot of haters about that restaurant and how can they do their $2,000.
Well, it's sold out.
But look,
people are paying.
They're still there.
I'm sorry, just seeing as we're going out of Lagos quickly, also shout out to Rodo. Every time I go to Abuja, I eat at Rodo.
I love Rodo.
Because the food, they don't miss. The service, admittedly, I had a little error when I went one time, but it was handled so beautifully that it was like, it's not that, do you know what I mean? Every time, and they're consistent.
It's so good.
And they are consistent.
With all these places we've mentioned, they have been around in this industry for so
a minute.
long. And with social media, it's so quick to think, oh, this person just showed up with this. Like, who knows how many people don't know about Obehi, for example, starting with basically doing private dining functions. Look at Chef Stone with the edge, with the culinary school. I mean, there's so many, El Padrino, there's so many of them that have had a long journey. And we appreciate the time that they've took to understand the industry and to be intentional about when they come out and open the space. To the young chefs out there, it is not a 2-year journey. It is not. I've been here 4 years and I got plans, but I know that it takes time. And I don't want to open something and it misses the mark. So
you have to take everything.
This fast life we're living now doesn't cut it in business.
You have to take everything one bite at a time. Did you see what I did
there?
And
on that note,
I like that.
I was literally explaining to someone the idea behind the name of the podcast. So as you said that, I was like, oh my God, it's going to work.
And I think that's the end.
Yeah, that's really that.
Before we cut the cameras, we do have a segment we like to call
it's my favorite segment.
The One Bite segment. Mm-hmm. And today's topic. Right. So we're going to briefly discuss just our thoughts. This one is not too serious. You don't have to be too politically correct. You don't have to be nice. Your thoughts on restaurants with policies. Sometimes they make sense. Sometimes they're a bit outlandish. I just want to start by saying my 2 pence. I think you have to understand that as an establishment, if you are going to put policies in place, they have to match the level of what your establishment is. Mm-hmm. Louder for those at the back.
So if you're a cafe, you cannot expect someone to come to you all dressed up. If you call yourself a diner, I'm gonna come there looking a bit, you're a diner, do you know what I mean? Your name has to like, respectfully. But this then goes back to a point that I will always hammer on. Words mean things. Yes. If you know you don't want to be looked at as a certain level of an establishment, don't put that in the name of your establishment. What are your thoughts?
I get where some of these policies come from. And there's a trend where, still is, where as soon as a new restaurant opens up, you'll see a horde of like people coming in just to take pictures. They will bring a change of clothes in their backpacks, go into the toilets, change, and come out, order a soda or water, like the cheapest thing on the menu, and stay there for like 2 hours just taking pictures.
That's bad behavior.
And there's 2 thoughts or schools of thoughts on this. One set of establishments thinks it's actually good exposure, like people taking pictures, tagging them. Then there's another who says we don't want this kind of exposure, but this is the wrong people, because then the rest of the guests feel uncomfortable. And I have seen it many, many a times. I was in one once, and I looked out the door. She didn't even come in because she knew she could not step foot in the way she was dressed. She was naked with a net. The only thing she was wearing was a thong, a net. And I had to take a picture. I was like, I cannot believe she came out and thought, I'm going to do this. And there were kids in this place. Yeah. It was a cafe.
That's when I get I'm like,
that's kids, the funny thing is I've sent someone away from a restaurant and cancelled their order that I was consulting for because of this. Because the owner was like, what do I do if I want to ask someone to leave? I was like, what do you mean? And she explained it to me. And we went to go and see the cameras. And the girl was wearing, similar to what you said, mesh situation. It was so bad. So we had to ask her to leave.
I don't think in that scenario you're going to insult someone, because there needs to be a level of understanding of how you come dressed into a public establishment, especially one with children in it.
Yeah. Exactly.
There has to be. So I think if you are setting the, fair rules right from the beginning, from the onset, it is clear that you, and this is something we face a lot, like when I talk to restaurants, how can we know who's booking? Like, they don't want to put out booking links or reservations because they don't know who's booking. I'm like, how do you know who's booking when they send you a WhatsApp message? It's the same thing. They're like, oh, well, we can gauge it.
Yeah, you can look at the
profile picture. They might look great on a profile picture, but come in still.
Yeah.
You just need to set the rules. As soon as someone books, you send them, an email saying, thank you, but these are our house rules.
Exactly.
And once you've sent that to them and they break any of those rules, you have the right to send them away.
Absolutely.
I completely agree with that. I think if any other point I can add is training as well of the people in the restaurant to understand what is acceptable and what isn't, and also just the level of discernment and decision making that people have. There are times where, unfortunately, I do think restaurants have made errors in wrongly profiling people. But most cases, I just do think with some training on what is the type of customer that we're looking for, and how to also successfully communicate rules to customers without
offending them.
Yeah. So it comes with training, it comes with guidance, and ensuring that everyone it's not just the managers that have this rule book and play, but also the waiters are given enough time to really understand what it is the restaurant is about, because sometimes it may not be a manager I'm talking to, it can be a waiter who has looked at me and said something offensive based on, oh, this is just policy.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to be an excuse as well.
Exactly.
But I very much agree with policies from the onset. If someone goes on TikTok or Instagram and decides to blast you because you didn't let them in for wearing slippers and a see-through dress, well, the policies have been there.
They've been there.
And you are just wrong.
Yeah. Okay. That was good. That was a nice little one bite. Okay. So
thank you so much, Tannaz.
It's been
so such a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Right. You can find us on all streaming platforms, wherever you listen to your podcasts, as well as on YouTube.
Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all our social media platforms, and we cannot wait for you to tag us and follow us on One Bite Pod.
And thank you to our amazing production partners, Arrow House Studios, for constantly helping us churn out amazing content. And I also want to thank Woodscope for giving us this beautiful space to create the amazing content that we produce for you guys.
And let's not forget our drinks partners, Tommy. Thank you so much for keeping us hydrated throughout this whole podcast series. This has been amazing.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And that is it. Cheers,
that is
guys.
It. We look forward to dishing it out with you
one bite at a time. Thank you, Tannaz.
Thank you.